Hola, this is grammar lesson number 1 for chapter 3 of Así se dice. This corresponds with page 3 in your notes packet and page 100 of your textbook. Okay, before we take a look at the new lesson on verbs that end in AR and how to change those to match subjects, I'm going to make sure we remember both our subjects and the previous verbs we've talked about. So take a minute to take a look at this chart. These are the Spanish subject pronouns. We've gone over this quite a bit in the past few weeks. However, if there's any of these that you don't remember, go ahead and pause the video, write down what you need to in the margin of your notes, anything along those lines. Remember that the vosotros and the vosotras forms are only used in Spain, so we're not really going to do many examples of those from here on out. Instead, ustedes will be the plural you that we really focus on. Okay, our other review topic then are what two verbs have we already discussed? Because we're going to start really expanding with verbs now. And then the two verbs that we've talked about in the past are tener and ser. Okay, and for each of those, there are 6 forms depending on who it is that has something or is. So for instance, yo tengo, I have, whereas yo soy, I am. Okay, so both tener and ser changed to these forms depending on the subject of the sentence. Again, if you wanted to review those, what that looks like, now is the time to go ahead and do that. All right, on to the new info, and this is top of page 3 of your packet. Tener and ser are both what are considered irregular verbs because they don't follow a pattern. Most other verbs in Spanish follow a really nicely laid out pattern of, what are the forms of this verb or how does this verb work. You don't have to memorize each verb form individually. Okay, so first of all, we start out by looking at what type of verb it is. And there are 3 different types of verbs in Spanish. First of all, when we look at a verb, it's called an infinitive. Okay, so all of the verbs on your vocabulary list that end in R, and those are examples of infinitives. Now in English, infinitives are 2. To run, to work, to talk, to answer, to teach. Those are infinitives. In Spanish, infinitives are used all the time, whereas in English, they're not used quite as often. Now, infinitives are divided into 3 different categories in Spanish. There are AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. So you look at the last 2 letters of the verb to decide what type of verb it is. Both tener and ser are ER verbs, okay, because that's their last 2 letters. What we're going to talk about today are verbs that end in AR and what their patterns are. Okay. So, and the majority of verbs in Spanish, by the way, are also AR verbs. They're quite common compared to the other 2. Okay, now point number 2 in your notes, again, all Spanish verbs then change their endings to match up with the subjects. Okay, so tener, the endings of tener change to match the subject. Ser is just a weird verb, so the whole word changes. However, in most verbs, it's just the last couple of letters that change. Okay, now before we look at our example verb of estudiar, I want you to notice or remember that we know a lot of vocabulary that are AR verbs. Hablar, enseñar, contestar, mirar. Okay, those again are all AR verbs. All right, so let's look at the example verb of estudiar, to study. We're going to take a look at how that word estudiar changes to match up with different subjects, to say things like I study, we study, they study. Okay, so let's start with the yo form. Okay, that word is estudio. Okay, so notice what happens to the ending. The AR drops at the end and we change it to an O. Yo estudio. Any of our AR verbs, that's what's going to happen. So yo hablo, yo contesto, yo pago. Okay, that would be the yo form of those verbs. The to form, in this example, estudias, you study. Again, often the to form is in a question, so I might ask, ¿estudias mucho? ¿Hablas mucho? ¿Compras muchas cosas? Do you buy a lot of things? But the to form of these verbs is going to end in as. Okay, the el, ella, usted form, he or she form of any verb, ends in an a. Okay, for an AR verb. So in the case of estudiar, it's estudia. He studies or she studies, and it could even be a formal you. Now remember that in this case, in the LAO usted form, sometimes you're using names. I might say, Juan levanta la mano, or Amelia presta atención. Okay. Pablo contesta la pregunta. Okay, so you may see names instead. However, the LAO usted form ends in an A. All right, next up is the nosotros. So with estudiar, that's estudiamos. Amos. Okay. So we study. Nosotros estudiamos. Nosotros regresamos. We return. Nosotros trabajamos. We work. Pagamos. We pay. So nosotros form amos. Remember, sometimes the subject of a nosotros form is going to be another name, y yo. So mi hermano y yo estudiamos. You see that y yo, it means the nosotros form. Okay, I'm going to show you the vosotros in case you're curious. However, we're not really going to work very much with the vosotros form. So estudiáis is the vosotros form of estudiar. So notice what the ending is. It's going to follow that same pattern with our other verbs too. Okay, then really the last one we're going to work with is the ellos form. Ellos, ellas, and ustedes. So they do something, or you guys. Okay, in the case of estudiar, that's estudian. Okay, so they study or you guys study. Ellos necesitan, they need. Mis hermanos compran. Okay, my brothers buy. There'd need to be more to the sentence. Ustedes regresan temprano? Are you guys returning early? Regresan. Yeah, so ellos, ellas, or ustedes, the form ends in an N. All right, so really what happens if you look at this chart is that the AR is dropped from the end of the verb, and then you add on the endings that you see in red here on the chart to match up with the subject correctly. Okay. Pause here if you need to, but I'm going to show you a couple of examples on the next slide. Okay, so these are three other verbs we've looked at in this chapter: comprar, llevar, and mirar. And so we're going to look at the charts of all three of these verbs, again, just as examples of what that would look like. So we've already got the yo form of comprar, which is compro, I buy. To form, compras, you buy. Usted and ella is going to be the same. Usted is the formal you. So usted compra, ella compra as well. So she buys, you buy. Nosotros compramos, and ellos compran. All right, let's take a look at llevar, to wear or to carry. You're going to notice, again, the same endings after we drop the AR from the verb. So, yo llevo, I wear or I carry. To llevas. Lleva is the usted form, but it's also the ella form. So, ella lleva, usted lleva. Nosotros llevamos, we wear. Okay? Llevamos vestidos, we wear dresses. Okay? Llevan, they wear, they carry. Okay? Let's look at mirar as well. Mirar, to see or to watch. Yo miro, to miras. El, ella, and usted. That form is mira. And so that's written there twice in the chart. Nosotros miramos, and ellos miran. Okay, so notice how that same pattern follows through in all of these verbs. And it's, when you hear it as well, there is definitely a pattern to the endings. All right, so what's next in our lesson? I'm going to end here. However, what's next in both of your notes and on your homework assignment are these 6 example sentences. For the most part, you're going to be giving 2-word responses, except for in numero seis as the translation. By the way, The bonus word or the secret word for this lesson is mirar. Right? Adios.